Oh, it's a good time to be a fan of the Scott Pilgrim franchise, as we've been getting a new resurgence of Scott Pilgrim content, and I am loving it. In 2023, we got the new Scott Pilgrim anime, Scott Pilgrim Takes Off, and now we have a new game to play with, Scott Pilgrim EX, that released on March 3rd, 2026 from Tribute Games, where a lot of the people who worked on the original Scott Pilgrim game made by Ubisoft Montreal are now located. So it's nice to see them finally get to work on another Scott Pilgrim game, especially since they even got Anamanaguchi to come back to make the soundtrack for this new game, making it a great spiritual sequel to the 2010 game Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, the game, where it takes on the best notes from the original game but cranks them up to 11. Like the previous Scott Pilgrim game, this one's a side-scroller beat-em-up. Taking place seemingly after Scott Pilgrim Takes Off the anime, everything has been peaceful in Toronto, Canada, until a new villain shows up known as Metal Scott, and he kidnaps the members of the band, the Sex Bob-ombs. So we need to punch and kick our way around Toronto, taking on robots, demons, and vegans in order to save the Sex Bob-ombs. Like the first game, you can take control of different characters and play with up to 4 people, with Scott and Ramona returning as some of the playable characters. But this time, they're joined by Matthew, Lucas, Roxy, Robot01, and Gideon, who are each a selectable player that has their own moves and abilities they can use on the battlefield. And you'll have to explore a multitude of different places throughout space and time, with rifts that are opening up across Toronto that lead to areas like the Ice Age, an 80s vegan police station, or an old-timey dance club, just as some examples, giving you new enemies to fight across each that'll drop coins and items that you can pick up to give you stat boosts. Each character has their own set stats that they start off with across vitality, willpower, strength, and agility. For example, Scott starts off all-rounded as a character with all his stats being consistent across all 4 categories. But if you choose Lucas Lee, his stats start off focusing on strength, and Roxy starts with hers all in agility. But don't worry, these stats can be upgraded on each character by collecting items that drop, as I mentioned before, or by eating certain foods from stores that you'll come across that can help you heal as well as boost certain stats, with the different boosts you get from the items at the store being secret until you buy them, at which point you'll be able to go back and see what they give you. It's a nice little mechanic that I appreciate, where everything's kind of hidden away until you buy it for the first time, with you not knowing what stats they're going to boost until afterwards. And if you want even more of a stat boost, you can go to different shops in order to grab accessories that you can equip to give you certain stat boosts whenever you need them. And it's probably a good idea to get those when you find them, so you'll be ready to fight the mobs of enemies you come across, with each character having their own set of attacks and patterns you can play around with to find ones that match your style, with some of the characters' attacks being referenced in the books, movie, and even the anime. Like Ramona's strong attack, visually representing the different evil X's. Like a sword representing Gideon, a skateboard representing Lucas, and a broccoli representing Todd. Or Matthew Patel's attacks referencing his fight with Gideon Graves in the anime. And you can also equip an assist that'll give you some additional help in battles. Each character has their own set assists, but you can select any assist as any character you want once you unlock them. Like Ramona's assist being Gideon, the cat, who sweeps across the screen and attacks enemies. Or Robot01's assist, which will be the Katanagi twins giving you an area of healing for a short period of time. But the one I found myself using the most was Gideon's assist, which calls in Julie powers to give you some extra attack strength, which comes in a lot of handy. And there's even some extra assists that you'll unlock as you progress through the game. The different characters and abilities make for a very well-rounded game, where you can find a playstyle that fits you. And you can even switch between what characters you're playing as at any time. But just be aware, the stats will be connected to that character. So if you level up one character to the max stats and then move on to another, you'll be starting from scratch again. But luckily, it doesn't take much to level up your stats of your character enough to catch up with the game again. And really, these stat boosts aren't even really needed to progress through the game. They just make the game easier. So if you want to ignore stat boosts and just keep going through the game, you can, making it a best of all worlds kind of situation for the gameplay, where you don't need to grind to level up your character. Unless you're having trouble with getting past a boss, then you have the option to go back, level up a little bit, and give yourself more of an advantage. But where the gameplay of Scott Pilgrim EX is very fun, what I found to be an absolute joy throughout the game that had me smiling ear to ear were the constant references you come across. Throughout the game, there are a ton of references to previous entries in the Scott Pilgrim franchise from the books, movies, and anime. Like the Happy Avocado from Book 5 makes an appearance with Todd Ingram working there now. There's even a store you can shop at referencing Honest Ed's, where the original fight between Scott and Todd Ingram took place in the 3rd book in the series. And the background is filled with all kinds of characters. Like Knives' parents who show up as background characters, and his sister Tamara who shows up as a salesperson at the record store, and Mobile can be found at Wallace's place to teach you additional moves and techniques. Characters' attacks even make references, like I mentioned before, like Ramona's super attack being her going supersonic from Scott Pilgrim Takes Off. And while technically not Scott Pilgrim, two characters from another Brian Lee O'Malley story can be seen in the background with Katie and Hazel from Seconds, which, if you haven't read it and you're a fan of Scott Pilgrim, I heavily suggest doing so. Then there's the joke that Julie Powers is working at basically every job imaginable. There's honestly too many Easter eggs and references from the Scott Pilgrim series to mention them all here. But not every reference I found pure joy out of was just a reference to the Scott Pilgrim series, as this game is filled with references to other games as well. To start off, Metal Ska is a direct reference to Metal Sonic from the Sonic series. And one of the places you'll visit is called Castlevania, which is a clear reference to Castlevania. And there's other items as well that reference games, like the Koopa shells and turnips from the Mario series. And on the main street of Toronto, you can see the annoying dog from Undertale that represents its creator, Toby Fox. And there are plenty of references to the NES system, like the Game Genie for NES being plugged into what looks like Super Mario 3 for the store you can buy items from, and the carpet in Stephen Lang's house being an NES controller pattern. Then there's a part where you have to destroy a car, which seems to be a reference to the Street Fighter minigame where you do the same. And even a vegan police officer named Zelda, which is a reference to the Legend of Zelda games. That looks eerily like Jill Valentine from Resident Evil with her hat with a giant V on it. Again, so many here, I could probably keep listing these references for hours, but let's get back to the game. Because you won't just be taking out robots, demons, and vegans throughout your adventure. There's a multitude of new bosses for you to fight, some of which representing the evil X's with a twist. Like in the Ice Age, you'll come across Roxy as a cave woman riding a T-Rex that looks like Todd. Or in Castlevania, you'll fight the twins as a combined Phantom of the Opera, which when you defeat them, it poses like a statue in the Metroid series. Even Simon Lee makes an appearance as a boss, who was a villain from a flashback in the third Scott Pilgrim book and the Scott Pilgrim vs. the animation short that aired on Adult Swim. And plenty of other bosses that I won't spoil for people who want to take a look at this game for themselves. The game is just downright fun. Overall, I give Scott Pilgrim EX a very well-deserved 5 out of 5. It's rare that I come away from a game grinning ear to ear throughout the entire playthrough of it. The overall gameplay is extremely fun and a nice addition to the beat-em-up genre that's been on an extremely high note lately. Then the variety of characters and moves give a ton of variety to the different playstyles you can go throughout the game with you being able to switch out between the different characters whenever you want to try something new. And the different references sprinkled throughout the game are so much fun to find. Whether they're in your face, like the map of the world being in the style of Sonic the Hedgehog levels, or hidden away, like the bread in Wallace's house steaming on the kitchen counter. I'm sure there's plenty I missed or just didn't get. Like I'm sure these two here are a reference to something given how much they stand out in this area, but I for the life of me can't tell who they're a reference of. So if you know who these characters are referencing, please let me know in the comments. I'd really appreciate it. And I didn't even mention the amazing soundtrack from Anamanaguchi, a return for this game, which brings back the classic 8-bit chiptune style that I love. This was my most looked forward to game in 2026. And it not only met my already high expectations for it, but it blew them away, and it's for sure a game that anyone that's a fan of Scott Pilgrim needs to play. If you want to check it out, the links to find Scott Pilgrim EX can be found in the description below. Also, if you made it this far, hit that subscribe button and check out some of our other videos as well. If you have suggestions for other games you think we should play, let us know in the comments. Until next time, this has been Brad with the Bickering Nerds.